Hello.
So, Graham, briefly introduce yourself. Won't take long, I'm sure.
Graham Chalmers, Harrogate, Hull Mail, Bertelsmann Argus, Charm Gigs, Chalmers Events, ex Harrogate National Festival Fringe organizer. Yeah, that's a bit, I think.
Excellent. And I'm Charles Hutchinson, still charleshutchpress.co.uk, and still doing contributions to York Radio, and still, of course, doing weekly features in the York Press newspaper and the More Things to Do column, and expanding that as well now into the Gazette and Herald, covering the Rydale area as well. So lots of journalistic activity going on for both of us. Busy times. Tonight, of course, we're up against.
I was thinking, Charles, you should every podcast mention your favorite piece you've done on your website in the previous week.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Well,
I don't mean read the whole thing out. I just briefly.
Well, I will give a plug to a young company from York called Griffin Age Theatre, and they're about to do they've done one production, small scale as could be, in the Perky Peacock, which is a cafe in Barker Tower in York, and they're now doing their first production properly at the theatre at 41. And this is Rope, which of course Patrick Hamilton play made famously into a film by Alfred Hitchcock in 1948.
That's true.
And I've interviewed the director, Katie Leckie. This is Northern Irish talent, just doing a master's degree at the moment in theatre making. And I'm always excited when new companies come on board in York. It's obviously interesting for me as a theatre writer to come across new talent, see how they present theatre, and just the answers that she's given me in the interview that we did have been just really interesting. I think it's going to be fascinating to see the show on Wednesday night, and I wish her all her best for her new company.
Good. That's to the point. Let's move on.
Yeah, Graham. Let's see our first topic tonight. Let's consider now. Okay, I have not seen American Fiction. I take it that this is a film, and you're saying merit awards at the Academy Awards. This film has escaped me because it doesn't seem to be nominated for anything at the BAFTAs.
It has. It's been nominated.
Well, so Graham, what have I missed?
Well, it's up for 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Actor for a kickoff, and it's up for the BAFTAs, which are happening tonight in London.
Right. But so when I heard American Fiction coming,
exactly. When I heard the film was about to be shown at Everyman in Harrogate, I thought I've got to go, and the simple reason is because of the name, American Fiction. I've never known almost a single film made that had American in the title that wasn't good. They're always good. There's something about the word American that makes films good.
It's a hell of a pressure then to put on a film. There's a challenge for listeners. Name a film with American in the title that is deeply disappointing.
Yeah, well, look at the films. American Beauty.
American Beauty, great example. Yeah.
American Psycho.
Yes.
American Graffiti.
Yeah.
American Gangster.
Yeah.
Even American Pie is funny.
Bye, Miss American Pie.
So anyway, I went to see American Fiction, full of high hopes. I mean, it stars Jeffrey Wright, who's a fantastic actor.
Yes.
And you might remember him from a couple of Wes Anderson films, Asteroid City and The French Dispatch. Yes. Also, he played Felix Leiter, the CIA sidekick of James Bond, in 3 Daniel Craig Bond movies. And he's just a great actor, and he's won Emmys and Tonys. So it stars him in this sort of literary satire family drama. And he plays like he's not quite successful writer and professor because he has his books published in general, but they're a bit overly well written to have mass appeal. So he's sort of like in an academic backwater, even though he's doing all right. And it's written and directed by Cord Jefferson, who's got a lot of experience doing comedy and drama, usually on TV and Netflix and HBO.
Yeah.
And I looked into Cord Jefferson because the theme of the film is how the white-dominated world of literature likes to push stereotypical versions of Black life based on the ghetto, usually, and crime. And how Jeffrey Wright, who's a real Black writer, writing about the black experience, but doesn't write about any of those cliches and none of those stereotypes, isn't as successful as the ones who write what he thinks is absolute bilge. So the director-writer himself, Cord Jefferson, had a white mother and a black father, grew up in Arizona. So he's sort of writing, from a personal experience. He's not some white middle-class guy making a film about a black writer talking about how the white middle classes look down on black middle classes. He knows what he's talking about. And so I thought, this will be a good film. And lo and behold, at first I thought it was a good film.
What then happened, Graham?
Well, Jeffrey Wright is brilliant. The film is intelligent and it's humorous and it's well acted and it's got a great rhythm to it. And you think, like, this is really good. But then as the story unfolds, where eventually he lets go his principles, because as a joke, he gives his agent a fictitious book set in the ghetto with all your cliches, and he makes up a fictitious writer's name for himself.
Yeah.
And the agent says, I'm not going to give this to publishers. This is just a joke. He says, no, yeah, it's fine. I want to do it as a joke. So he gives it to the publishers, and the publishers absolutely love it. They have no idea that it's a joke. They think it's an authentic black experience by a new writer who's a criminal on the run. So he starts to like flirt dangerously with being a mainstream mass appeal, massively successful writer, all by pretending to be some bloke on the run. And so this is all unfolding in the middle of his own family drama, where I think his mother gets Alzheimer and his sister dies. Plot spoiler. And it's so it mixes like the personal drama, the family drama, and the satire about the literary world and racism really well. At first you think, wow, this is such a good film. But then suddenly the family drama takes over and it gets to be like a sort of like TV series, not quite a soap opera, better than that, but the same sort of thing as a soap opera. And then it suddenly ends back in satire land. And the shift from family drama back to the satire is so sudden that I thought, oh, was that it? Was that the film?
Would you put that down to certain limitations in the director, whose past experiences perhaps not in this form of filmmaking?
No, I think it's more like it's a very soft, warm human film. So the satire is actually very soft and warm. So, for example, even this film is taking the mickey out of white people's view of black people and white culture's approach to black people. But as a white person watching the film, at no point did I feel uncomfortable, which shows you how cozy and soft the satire was. It reminded me of The Player by Robert Altman, which came out in 1992, a long time ago. And that was a satire on Hollywood starring Tim Robbins, which got 3 Academy Award nominations. It was a big hit. But I remember watching that at the time and thinking, well, it starts off as a satire of Hollywood, but by the end, it isn't really a satire of Hollywood. It's not really that cutting. And there's no darkness to American fiction. It's such a nice film that the satire completely loses its sting. And by the end, although it's been a good film, you think, well, it's not a brilliant film, because by the end, he sort of wins and learns to accept the fact that he's become successful by basically dumbing down. And it's almost like the point of it. I'm not sure what the point of the film is, but if there was a point of the film, you'd have to say it's that if you can't beat them, join them is the point of the film. And that's not great satire, is it?
Satire without edge and without bite, no point to it, Graham.
Yeah, well, at first it's got bite, and you think, oh, this is going to be.
Yeah, but if the bite goes, that sounds like compromise. One wonder whether studio pressure comes into it. One interested to know who the financing of the film is by. Whether actually it's not a film that was just for cinema release, but is a film that's for release elsewhere, which can sometimes compromise a film as well, with where the finance comes from, fear of losing that finance if you make a film that's too controversial.
I don't think it's that. I think it's more the tenor of the times. So, for example, one film that doesn't compromise, and as satires go, is unbelievably dark and unflinching, is The Zone of Interest by Jonathan Glazer,
exactly,
which is also up for the Academy Awards.
It is.
Where that makes you feel uncomfortable, because the film makes you almost root for the commandant of Auschwitz as he's trying to persuade his fellow Nazis around the table at a big meeting in Berlin to get his way, and how the Holocaust should continue. And the film is so cleverly done, you end up thinking like, well, I hope he wins his case. Then you find yourself thinking, wait a minute, what am I talking about? This guy's a monster. Exactly. This is just horrible.
Yeah.
So, but in general, films don't do that. And Zone of Interest is an art house film, not just because it's made in Polish. It's an art house film because it's unflinching. And these days, mainstream films are never unflinching. They always are a bit cozy, because we're not living in times where those sort of films get a mass audience.
Zone of Interest, interestingly, nominated for both Best Foreign Film and Best British Film.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, also very unusual. Also a good, a good
as you say,
the
language that's used in the film is the reason for the former award, and yet it's of course a British filmmaker. Interestingly, significantly too, of course, Oppenheimer, which is, I still think, likely when the awards as we speak, they're being announced, and I think it's got Christopher Nolan surely written all over it as the director of the award-winning BAFTA this time with Oppenheimer, but again a British director, and that I think we picked out there two hugely significant films, and they're both political films, of course, Zone of Interest and Oppenheimer, and they're both about the depths that man can sink to, or the heights that we try to seek. They're both there in Oppenheimer, that delicate balancing act of scientific genius versus the consequences of it. I think that when films take us to the edge, and both those films do, I really feel that's where filmmaking is at its most powerful, when it's making a message. Now, that can be done through satire, but it can also just be done by the savage truth of what we're watching, and making us uncomfortable.
Charles, it's not just a savage truth. It's having the courage not to pull back from the innate from the obvious conclusions of your own narrative. So the narrative contains within it an obvious conclusion, and in general nowadays, mainstream films would never pursue that conclusion to the very end, because it would be such a dark ending, and we're not living in times for dark endings, so it just doesn't happen. So it isn't just about being brutal, it's about pulling back from the obvious direction the film's going in.
I was listening to the interview Tom Schoen from the Times with Christopher Nolan that was on Times Radio, and Nolan was saying that he decided on the finale, the climax to Oppenheimer, pretty much right at the start of it. He knew that he had to have where it was going to finish in his mind all along, and that conviction about where it should finish is very significant. We often hear about film endings being changed, sometimes studio pressure, sometimes reactions to an ending, but here he was absolutely unbending in what he thought the end should be. And I think that's, again, that film is so well judged, so well measured in every way. It's a magnificent piece of work. But we've talked about Oppenheimer many times. So
certainly have.
So overall, Graham, American Fiction, would you or would you not recommend time to be spent in the company of that film?
I would, because it's such a classy film. I mean, it hasn't got, in terms of how it's acted, and in terms of the feel of it and the tempo and the dialogue, everything's to the point. It's all nailed on. It just hasn't quite got the courage of its own initial convictions. I think that's the problem for me.
Yeah. Well, so currently showing at Everyman in Harrogate, and American Fiction, which I'd maybe not had the publicity that it could have done, but hopefully our covering it here will do so. Now, Graham, I'm sorry to sort of continue with films, but it's just because we might as well. My idea of a romantic night was to see that February the 14th marked the opening of Bob Marley One Love. You can see where I'm going with this, Graham. Went to the Everyman, had the meal, watched the film.
And I watched the film as well as having the meal. That's interesting.
Graham,
Everyman's a great cinema, Bob.
Well, the trouble was my matcha latte never turned up, and I'm not suggesting that took my mind off the film, but it kept distracting me at moments, thinking, well, this is not a hugely wonderful film. This is, of course, what's interesting is many biopic films are made of musicians, and of course the next one coming up is the one on Amy Winehouse, and I wonder why so many of these are made. I'm going to make a suggestion here, Graham. Documentary films about the same subject, including the Amy Winehouse one, I think invariably work better than the biopics. That's my thought for the evening. Why is that? Is there too much compromise
Yeah,
involved?
but no, it's something more fundamental than that. The fundamental problem with doing biopics of real legends like musical legends, that is, like Bob Marley or The Doors or Johnny Cash or Amy Winehouse or Tina Turner, is that what biopics do in general is they take someone's real life with all its complications and its many shades of behavior, success and failure, and they simplify it and dramatize it and make it more exciting than it might have been. So the Glenn Miller story, which came out in the 50s, starring James Stewart, which I don't remember seeing in the pictures, by the way.
No, but
anyway,
look how far back then, a biopic.
Well, if it wasn't for the fact that Glenn Miller disappeared in a plane during the Second World War somewhere over an ocean, there'd be no drama to the film whatsoever. And so it means that because Glenn Miller's own life wasn't as dramatic as a film needs to have, the story was dramatized. The trouble with doing real legends who had very interesting lives, like Jim Morrison or Amy Winehouse or Bob Marley, is that you can't dramatize the truth when the truth is really interesting. You should really just try and retell the truth. But of course, filmmakers hate just retelling the truth. Where's the creativity in that? So they feel obliged to like mess around with the truth a bit to make it so it creates a sort of fakeness about it. So the reason that documentaries are always better, like the Amy Winehouse documentary that came out a few years back, was unbelievably good and quite upsetting. It was really sad to watch her and how she went in her final years towards her death.
Exactly.
So I can't see how you could, for real drama, how can a fictional version of that possibly beat the real drama?
I mean, we've seen, obviously, recently, of course, the Elvis Presley one, the Baz Luhrmann version of that, not including Priscilla in that. That was a different focus. And much as there were, I mean, I really enjoyed the Elvis one, but it was in some ways a fantasia of who Elvis was. But it seems to me, to be more rewarding when you have an author's voice, if you like, a narrator's voice, a director's voice, steering a documentary, taking the subject into really uncomfortable areas. And what happens in One Love is that it's not just one love, it's an entire family's love, the Marley family's love for Bob. And they are at the tiller of this film, even though they're not directing it, which is Ronaldo Marcus Green directing it. They're on the tiller at all times in this film. So you get the sense that, I mean, I think you could call the word hagiography. I think Mark Kermode used the word hagiography, but I thought it was hagiography. Anyway, who knows? You say tomato, I say tomato, whatever. And that is largely how this ends up. And it does hint at infidelities. It does hint that he wasn't the most attentive of fathers, but only in a very minor way. And it's Lashana Lynch playing Rita, who has a speech where she indicates that. And we have one image where he's in London and there's a young girl, a young woman in the background, and while he's on the phone in a phone box in London, and that's kind of hinting at infidelity or whatever. But it's only just nudged into that territory, nothing more than that. And you think, well, actually, it is part of his story. It is part of his story. And the thing that where the film decides to go mythical, it has this thing where there's a figure on a horse who keeps emerging through a field of fire. And it's taking Bob into that territory. Then it leads into the Rastafarianism. Although I thought the Rastafarianism in the story was better handled.
But Charles, this is just like The Doors when Oliver Stone managed to cast Jim Morrison's part really well. Yeah. But he then, rather than just sticking to the Doors story, which is already dramatic enough, he threw in all these scenes with like dancing Indians, all these hallucinations.
That is exactly the equivalent here, Graham. The mysticism. Yeah.
Well, you don't need it. It's not real. It's not required.
I mean, it's such a strong story, that the Bob Marley story. I would just urge people to go and listen to the songs again, and actually just go to Jamaica, as I did. And my understanding is that actually now, whereas when I went with bath salts all those years ago, and I went to Bob Marley's house, and behind the house was the recording studio, and the guide said, "That's Bob's studio, but that's not interesting. We're not going to go there." And I think that might need reflecting. I mean, that's always struck me. That what an extraordinary thing to say. No, there's no. Well, of course, we would like to have seen the recording studio. Made no sense that at all. So I think now the matter, obviously, of the history of Marley, that Jamaica is making better use of telling that story, which is a huge story to tell, and his significance is spread way beyond.
Charles,
Jamaica,
may I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Despite all that, is One Love a good watch? If you're not reviewing it, you're not.
No, it's a frustrating watch. It's a frustrating watch. It does that thing that these biopics always try to do, which is to show how songs were created. So it shows how Redemption Song was created, even though apparently it goes on about 1978, but the song actually came out was written in 1979. So a little bit of an inaccuracy there anyway. But it's just not substantial enough. The other thing that is
there's much politics in it, because he was involved with politics a bit.
I mean, obviously there is the political story within it, and it does talk about, obviously, the shooting that takes place and the concert that happens with both the political leaders in Jamaica at the time. Hugely significant concert. Actually, what they show of that is some real footage of when that happened, and that is very evocative. Significantly, though, Graham, the film is most interesting right at the end, when it's the real Bob Marley that we see in action, and, as I say, the two politicians. And you just feel a little. That's who Bob Marley is. This film never quite gets there. Never quite gets there. Doesn't have the courage again of convictions, which is what you're saying about American fiction. It's all just a bit too polite, if you like.
Well, the thing about Bob Marley is that he wasn't a cuddly character. He wasn't a Disney character.
No.
He was a man of the world. And the reason he was so popular, apart from how great the songs were, was there was an earthy side to him as well as an intelligent side.
Yeah.
So portraying him in a sort of Disney fashion is going to go wrong.
I read a very astute point where, if you like, although a lot of it's about 1978, when he's moved to London after being shot, and he makes Exodus, and we have James Norton scratching around playing Chris Blackwell, the boss of Island Records, in a role which is very much underwritten. Really, I mean, it's very insubstantial, and it's not very. It shows it's not very challenging for James as an actor, but. It is as if the greatest hits album is the one that it's limiting the number of songs that are significant, when in fact Marley wrote songs from the age of 16. His first single came out when he was 16. So it doesn't get the spread of his songwriting ability. It doesn't, and I also don't think we quite get the sense of why he wrote songs, what inspired him to write songs.
Yeah, but two of the biggest biopics of modern era music legends in terms of box office and degree awards, I Walk the Line About Johnny Cash for Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
And also on top of that, what's the other one? Oh, that was a huge one. The Queen biopic.
The Queen one. Yeah, Bohemian Rhapsody.
If you actually know about those acts in real life and know your history, both films were, a bit of an insult. But if you only had the greatest hits and didn't actually know the history, they were really enjoyable, entertaining, watchable films that made a lot of money. So is One Love one of those films, or does it?
I think there is potential for it to be that, but I just don't think it's even. I don't even think it's substantial enough on that level. I just always felt shortchanged by it. I just felt there's just not. It's insubstantial. He is so much more significant than this. It's not getting the full flavor.
Does it deal with the fact that Chris Blackwell actually molded Bob Marley in Britain in terms of his music to be successful?
It shows how Exodus emerged into the form that it did, but it's Marley that is saying. But it doesn't say that it's Blackwell that's actually suggests sowing the seeds for how he should go forward. It's shown as Marley making that decision to take. It's the nodding dog really for Chris Blackwell's role in it. It's much more that Marley's coming up with the ideas to make it, if you like, a crossover for reggae into the field that Exodus that took him. So this is not a film I would be rushing to for anyone to go and see. I would urge instead to just go and listen to the records, and not just Exodus, and not only the greatest hits album, but actually discover more of Bob Marley's work and read about him as well, because he is a mighty musician, and unparalleled within the field that he came from of making music. Reggae was not appreciated at the time. He was the breakthrough act for reggae, and, and that in itself, is an iconic status.
Reggae was like bubbling under. A lot of American and British acts were using bits of reggae.
They
before
were
the Bob Marley and the Wailers made it big, and ska was pretty big, especially in Britain. But Bob Marley was authentic. The reason Bob Marley was so important was because he crossed over to the mainstream in the same way that Kurt Cobain did, by remaining authentic. He didn't become a Disney version of himself to be successful. No. And even though he had to westernize his music a little bit with Chris Blackwell's help to be successful, he didn't sell out. So that made him really important.
That's true. I mean, there's never a sense of a sellout. Not absolutely true, always to what he believed in. So, Graham, that's our two films for the evening. Feel there's time for an interruption, and maybe actually, just because I don't know about the light installation that's going to be happening in Harrogate, we've of course got the colour and light installation at the moment running in York that York Bid have put on, and that is on York Art Gallery at the moment. So which is by Double Take Projections, who are an Edinburgh company. So that's York's light installation running until I think about February the 25th. So what is the light installation in Harrogate, Graham?
Well, sleepy old Harrogate with the old buildings and the nice flowers and the stray. It's thanks to Sharon Canavar, the chief executive of Harrogate National Festivals.
Yeah,
has been having more and more installation art type pieces, especially light festivals, in recent years, all of which have been massively successful in bringing something modern to Harrogate, which is great. So the Beam Festival, a light festival, is coming up for one weekend in March 15th and 16th, in the middle of Harrogate. And it's been done by a highly regarded Leeds-based artist, James Bollen. That's Bawn. And he's lighting up iconic buildings around the town centre that weekend in March, including the War Memorial and Crescent Gardens area. And so this will be good. I mean, previously HIF, that's Harrogate National Festivals, have done events like Fire Garden and a Fire and Light Festival, which were both really popular. And I'm really pleased that they're doing this one. But I would say, as a neutral on light installations, I mean, I have seen some good light installations that had an effect on me. So I think I went to the Hayward once in the noughties to see an anti-Gormley, where you walked into a large box which was full of fog and white lights. So you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, and it was like you'd sort of like died and gone to heaven. It was a very odd experience. So I'm not against light installations per se, but I'm also in general agnostic when it comes to that sort of art.
Why?
Well, I think there, in terms of, well, you remember that modern art used to be challenging, which is less so over the last 20, 30 years. And to be challenging means it's got a point. And the thing about light installations, they're not the only type of art that has this characteristic, is that they don't challenge you.
So they're the birthday, Graham. They're the birthday cake. They're the birthday cake of art. Yeah, they get blown. They blow out after a short while.
That's right, and they're the sort of art that people who don't actually like art can enjoy perfectly fine, which is why they're successful. And I'm not going to knock anything successful in terms of art, especially not in Harrogate. But I personally don't, in general, love that sort of thing. But I'm also the man who doesn't really like opera, and doesn't rate theatre unless it's brilliant theatre. So,
I mean, the York Art Gallery one, Graham, interestingly, what Double Take Productions did was take paintings from the York Art Gallery collection and work them into a fusion of imagery across the frontage of York Art Gallery. And obviously part of the thinking behind this, one is to bring people into the city, draw them into that, but also to draw people into actually thinking, do you know what, I'll now go inside the York Art Gallery and actually look at the art gallery collection. So there is some purpose behind that. It's obviously commercially led as well. because what happens is that
Well, it's
people then go
everything
to the
possible.
restaurants and bars in the town, having spent only 10 minutes watching the installation. So there's a commercial reasoning behind it. But interestingly, the contrast though, Graham, in Harrogate, just the 2 days. Now in York, it's running. It's already been up running for a week, and it's running to the 25th. Why only 2 days for the one in Harrogate?
Well, Harrogate is, after all, a town. It may have the standards of a city, but it is only the size of a town. So I assume that the longer you have it, the more expense involved. But I haven't actually seen a Harrogate light installation because obviously it's not been unveiled because it couldn't be until it's in situ. So for all I know, I might actually be completely bowled over by it. But the thing about any art to me is there's two words that always apply.
Yes.
How do I feel? The feel of it. Does it make me think? And how I react to art is always based on feel and thinking. And if those two things come into play, I go, "Oh, that's good."
And that's not happening with light installations.
Not always, but
okay.
it's always possible.
Now, Graham, our last topic for the evening, a singer that I've never ever connected with at all. I've never enjoyed watching her, never thought any of her songs stand out whatsoever. So I guess it must be deceptive charm for the Irish singer Roisin Murphy, because it's just escaped me all along.
Well, yeah, I'm not.
Jules Holland, of course, has her on his show regularly, so there must be something about it. What is her deceptive charm, and what's
I've never previously been a huge fan. I mean, she's been big since she was in Moloko in the 90s. Very classy sort of dance pop.
Yes.
Very, very sort of like sophisticated, subtle type.
But not on a level with Tracy Thorn when she was doing that form of music for Everything But the Girl.
I've never been a huge fan, and I saw her at Manchester in 2022, and she changed costume every single song, and it was all very flouncy and romantic, and it was she was like a disco diva with a different outfit every song, and it was hugely entertaining. I thought, well done, Machine. This is an entertaining show. It's really good. I don't love all the music. I don't love all your albums, but it was good. But then I went to see her at O2 Academy, a smaller venue in Leeds, just the other week. And she's changed since then. She had a 5-piece band playing live. There's virtually nothing that wasn't played live. She changed outfit every song, but it was from a small box and a small rack of clothes. And
that's more theatrical.
Yeah, and it wasn't like so flamboyant or flouncy. It was each minor tweak of her costume suited the song in a very quiet, natural fashion. And then the way the band played and the way she sang the songs, there was much more of herself invested in the performances. It was much more naturalistic, much less disco diva, more Roisin Murphy. And some of the live versions were vastly superior to the album versions because I've played them on album. Yeah. And I just thought she was really good. She was a proper artist. I mean, she in her own sort of like dance music type way, she was as good as PJ Harvey. I wouldn't put her next to Kate Bush, but she was genuinely very good. And
in our last 90 seconds then, Graham, why were you making links with Marlene Dietrich and Jean-Luc Godard?
Well, she dressed like her at one point, and there's a bit in Band Apart 1954 where they start dancing in a cafe, all naturalistic. It heavily influenced La La Land with Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. It's like a dance number, but it's done in a sort of amateurish, slightly shambolic, natural setting way. Well, the way that Roisin was behaving was just like that. It was like she was pretending she couldn't dance, but she can because she got all the steps right every time. Every movement was spot on, but it was done in a sort of La La Land, Jean-Luc Godard, Band Apart, Pulp Fiction, Tarantino, Emma Thurman, John Travolta type way every time. And I thought, wow, she's really good. So I became a born-again Roisin Murphy fan on the spot.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub-production.